Welcome to a new episode from English Plus Podcast. And in today's episode, we will talk about the Cardiff Giant. We will talk about some words from this story. And of course, don't forget that you will have 20 words you can learn if you follow the link you find in the description of the episode, along with the transcript and the downloadable PDF exercises and the interactive exercises you can find on my website. So without further ado, let's start with our story, Cardiff Giant.
In 1869, near the town of Cardiff, in a rural area of New York State, workers digging a well unearthed a giant human-like figure. The Cardiff Giant, as it came to be known, was more than 10 feet tall and appeared to be of ancient origin. The discovery created a national sensation. Was the Cardiff Giant one of the greatest scientific discoveries of the century? A number of people thought it was. Newspaper reporters called it the eighth wonder of the world. William Newell, who owned a farm on which the discovery was made, erected a tent around the giant and charged admission to view it. Thousands came. Then a group of prominent Syracuse, New York business people saw the potential for making even greater profits. They purchased a 3/4 interest in the Cardiff Giant for $30,000 and moved it to Syracuse, where it could attract even larger crowds. At this point, some anthropologists began to express uncertainty about the authenticity of the giant. Shortly thereafter, it was exposed as a counterfeit, a hoax engineered by George Hull, a tobacco farmer and cigar manufacturer. Hull had bought a large block of gypsum, a white mineral, and had two sculptors carve from it the likeness of a human being. He then attended to every detail to give the statue an aged look. When the giant was complete, Hull and Newell had buried it. Hull's Cardiff Giant was the ultimate American anthropological hoax. Ironically, people still wanted to see the fake. It was moved to Albany and then to New York City. Thwarted in his attempt to buy the giant, the great promoter P.T. Barnum had an imitation made. Barnum's fake was soon drawing larger crowds than the original. Over the years, the Cardiff Giant has been displayed by its many owners. In 1948, the giant was moved to the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York, where you can still see it today.
So, that was our story about Cardiff Giant. But now, let's focus on the words we want to learn from the story. Let's start with the very first word, and that is rural. R-U-R-A-L. In the story we said, in 1869, near the town of Cardiff, in a rural area of New York State. So, we're talking about a rural area. We're not talking about the city. Rural places are far away from large towns or cities. So, when we talk about a rural area of New York State, we're talking about a place that is not in the city. It is in the countryside, a place far away from large towns or cities. And we can use rural as well to talk about the features which are typical of areas that are far away from large towns or cities, like when we say rural life or rural way of life. So that was our first word. Now let's move to the next word, potential. In the story we said, then a group of prominent Syracuse, New York business people saw the potential for making even greater profits, so they bought a 3/4 interest in the Cardiff Giant for $30,000. They saw the potential. Potential is spelled P-O-T-E-N-T-I-L. They saw the potential. When we talk about potential, we're not talking about something you can see now, but something you can see that is going to happen in the future. There is a great possibility for this thing to happen, and it's usually a good thing. We use potential to say that someone or something is capable of developing into the particular kind of person or thing mentioned. Now here, they saw the potential of great profit. So they bought a 3/4 interest in the Cardiff Giant for $30,000. So that was our second word, potential. Now for our next word, uncertainty. U-N-C-E-R-T-A-I-N-T-Y. Uncertainty. In our story, we said at this point, some anthropologists began to express uncertainty about the authenticity of the giant. The authenticity, how original it is. Is it original? Is it fake? They started to express uncertainty. Do you think they were sure about that, or they had their doubts? When you are certain, when you're talking about certain things, you're talking about sure things. You're talking about things you are confident of. But uncertainty is a state of doubt about the future or about what is the right thing to do. In our context, it's not about the future. It is about the authenticity, the originality of the giant. And they were right, because that is our next word. Shortly thereafter, it was exposed as a counterfeit. Counterfeit is spelled C-O-U-N-T-E-R-F-E-I-T. Counterfeit. So we see anthropologists who expressed uncertainty about the authenticity of the giant were right, because soon thereafter it was exposed as a counterfeit. And counterfeit, mostly we use it with money, but we can use it with anything else. We can use counterfeit money, goods, or documents. These are not genuine. They're not original. They're not real. They're fake. So, counterfeit money, goods, or documents are not genuine, but have been made to look exactly like genuine ones in order to deceive people. So there's nothing innocent about counterfeit money, goods, or documents. They were made on purpose to deceive people. So here the Cardiff Giant turned out to be a counterfeit. Was not real, was fake. And now for our last word for today, and that is ultimate. In our story, we said Hull's Cardiff Giant was the ultimate American anthropological hoax. The ultimate, U-L-T-I-M-A-T-E, ultimate. And we use ultimate to describe the most important or powerful thing of a particular kind, and we can also use ultimate to describe the most extreme and unpleasant example of a particular thing, like in our case. But we can also use ultimate to describe the best possible example of a particular thing. Well, we're talking here about a hoax, so it could be the best possible example of a hoax, which is a bad thing. So you could take it any way, whether it's the most extreme and unpleasant example of a particular thing or the best possible example of a particular thing. Both of them work in this context. And that is the meaning of ultimate. So these were our words for today: rural, potential, uncertainty, counterfeit, and ultimate. And I hope you learned something new in this story about the Cardiff Giant. Whether you know about it or you haven't, this was the ultimate American anthropological hoax. Don't forget that you can find the transcript of this episode in the link I'm going to leave you in the description, and you can also find the interactive activities. You can practice the words you learned here, and don't forget, these are only 5 words we talked about in the episode, but there are 15 more waiting for you. There are 20 words for you to learn this week from English Plus Vocabulary Builder, but you can find the whole list on my website, along with the interactive activities and the downloadable PDF that you can use to make these words permanent in your active vocabulary bank. This is your host, Danny. Thank you very much for listening to another episode from English Plus Podcast. I will see you next time.